I think one of the things I'm still working on, and I've always taken pride in though, is I'm good at getting done,
Hmm.
right? High executive function.
Hmm.
And that can be a good superpower, but also like the other side of that coin is it often prevents you from becoming really good at delegating and leveraging a team.
Yeah. All right. Our guest today is Stemregen's COO, Spencer Matthews. You are going to love this episode. Spencer said something early on in the episode that I kind of hinged on. He said, "We joined the company." I'm like, "Well, what do you mean we?" Like, I wanted to know when you joined the company. He said, "Yeah, he and two of his prior co-founders joined Stemregen as a way to actually scale up a proven brand with an amazing CEO in a space that they could actually execute on." He is the COO, was a prior COO. He's also played the chief of staff role before and a director of ops role. We're going to go deep into all of those. Spencer is a Idaho native where he resides with his wife and four kids, spends a lot of time with his family in the outdoors and in sports. As the COO of Stemregen, he leverages 13 years of industry experience to guide the team towards ambitious growth goals. These guys are going to be a brand to watch. Additionally, as a managing partner of Fifth Hammer, he advises a limited number of other science-backed nutraceutical companies. He was also instrumental in scaling a company from 0 to 50 million in ARR in just over 4 years, culminating in a $200 million exit. So he is the real deal. You'll love this episode. You'll love the lessons that he shares. You can also watch this episode on our Second Command Podcast YouTube channel. This will be an episode to share with your team too. We'll see you on the inside. So, Spencer, welcome to the Second Command Podcast.
Thanks, Cameron. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I was at Dave Asprey's biohacking conference in Dallas back in May of this year. I used to coach Dave 8 years ago, and I was sitting in the audience with my wife, who's really obsessed with biohacking and health. And we were watching your CEO, Christian, on stage. I think he was actually the platinum, or your company was the platinum sponsor of the biohacking conference. So I was really
Yeah.
intrigued. I wanted to know, like, what is this all about? What's the business all about? Why is this guy a platinum sponsor? My wife was kind of ashamed of me that I didn't know who he was and who the business was. She was all geeked out, going, "Oh my gosh, I get to listen to him." Can you let us know, for the ones who aren't into the biohacking or maybe aren't on the forefront of science or of health yet, what it is about the business and the brand, and how you got into that, why you'd even be sponsoring something like Dave's event?
Yeah, I mean, Stemregen in a nutshell is Christian's life's work of stem cell research. The name kind of inherently applies that. But just like a common knowledge for body functions is we know we have an immune system and we can do certain things to boost our immune system. We have a digestive system. We can do certain things to help, right, that function properly. Christian's been one of the scientists to help pioneer the discovery of our human repair system, that our body does repair and rejuvenate, and stem cells are really the foundation of that. And so Stemregen is all about helping boost your natural repair system and helping the release of stem cells from your bones to your blood so they can then go and migrate and repair where they need to. Um, so that's the quick and dirty. I'm not the geek
Yeah.
nerd that, we'll dive deep into it,
No,
but
no, that
that's what we're about. And there's a place, right? Dave Asprey is the godfather of biohacking. So many people are into, the longevity and the health span. And Christian's research and products have found how this helps with repair over time. So
And I guess for layman's terms, that's kind of what biohacking is, right? Is living longer and
yeah.
healthier, right? Living longer and healthier and doing it in healthier ways without a doctor having to prescribe medicine. It's all the things that we can do to be proactive with our health. I had some hip issues about 5 years ago and was really fighting hard to not need to go get a hip replacement. It was an overuse injury from running and ski racing. And I had ozone injections and I got PRP injections and I had stem cell injections. But stem regen is different from stem cell injections.
Yeah.
So what's
Yeah.
the difference between what you guys are doing and what stem cells injecting into your bodies are?
Yeah, we work actually with a lot of stem cell therapy clinics that provide the injections. They're either sourcing stem cells or they're removing them from yourself and then injecting more acutely in a specific area, right, of injury or of a need to repair. This our solution is a supplement, right? So you take it orally and it helps trigger the release of stem cells from your own bone marrow. So your bone marrow naturally converts stem cells. They go into the bloodstream, they circulate through the blood, and they go to where they're called signaled to, throughout the body for needs for repair. So that's a natural process that happens as we age. The rate of that mobilization from the bone marrow to the blood declines. So this helps just improve that rate and increase that rate.
What's the kind of typical client that you go after? I mean, I would guess it's like athletes, people that are caring about their health. Is there an age that it works? Is there a demographic that it works better for? Is there a kind of person that's living healthier or not?
Yeah, I mean, our umbrella target audience is the health conscious high achievers, right? There's subsegments of that, like the biohackers, like the athletes, but there's also found just like um, 50 plus that are starting to become aware of age-related diseases,
Hmm.
right? And want to, kind of help improve that. And then a younger crowd, right? 30 plus. Typically, most people until they hit their 30s, they don't experience the phenomenon of aging,
Right,
right? They're
right.
like feel invincible and they can do everything. And then you hit 33 like me, and then you have 5 injuries, and you're like, holy crap, I can't even like pick my kids up anymore. Um, so we typically don't really see super young people, even though there is benefit in some, harder core athletes, like for repair and recovery, they will. But generally, it's kind of those populations of either currently struggling with age-related diseases or, overcoming, acute or long-term injuries, and then just preventative, caring about their longevity.
Yeah,
So
you kind of nailed the age for me too. I was in my mid 30s. I was like 36, 37, 38 when I was playing on two ultimate frisbee teams and I was
Ultimate's a
now.
great game.
Oh man, but when you're now
Uh,
stacked up against 21-year-olds as a 38-year-old, you
yeah.
start realizing like I'm not as young as I used to be, and I can't like go ho and fly out and try and catch the disc and land and break my actually nephew's off to the worlds for the third or fourth time this summer. He's
Oh,
off.
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it's a great sport. But that was when I started noticing the ground is a little further away than it used to be.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know what Stemregen is. We kind of understand why you're doing it and the proactive side. Flip the switch for us a little bit and talk to us about you getting involved in the business because you've been there, as the COO now. When did you join the organization?
It's been about a year and a half. So we came into Stemregen June, July of 2023.
Okay.
So
And you just said we. What does that mean?
yeah, so I have some business partners. We run a advisory firm called Fifth Hammer, and there's three of us. One is more of a technology expert and executive expert. One is a marketing expert, and then my strengths rely more on the operational side. We all operated together in a previous nutraceutical company called Silkworm Biosciences and Microbe Formulas, and we were founding team members there and helped build that from essentially 0 to 50 million ARR, and then helped provide an exit there. So we've since left that business in 2022, post exit, formed our own advisory firm, and then have looked to identify high integrity founders that have high quality science backed solutions that truly do what they say, right? In markets that are growing, to see, can we do it again? Um,
Ah, I like it. All right.
yeah,
So very
yeah.
similar. I was the COO for a company called 1-800 Got Junk, and I scaled them
Mm.
from 2 million to 106 million in 6 years. That was the fourth company that I'd built. When I left there 17 years ago, I became like the back pocket COO. I was kind of in other CEOs' back pockets. They'd pull me out to help them. That's kind of what Christian did. But he didn't just find you. He found like a stable of three of you that can bring in that expertise. Are you all full-time fractional or is it a bit of a blend?
We started fractional, and just to see, and two of us just started at first, and then we eventually transitioned full time. We saw the opportunity, Christian saw the benefit, and Christian was able actually to also make the transition out of the CEO spot and into the chief science officer spot, and really operate as founder, and refocus back on science, and more product and more education. And so, yeah, we operate as CEO, CMO, and COO, and are fully dedicated to helping STEMRegen grow.
I love this. All
So
right. So he's there kind of as the chief science and the kind of the vision guy as well. Is he the technical evangelist as well, or are all of you kind of evangelists for the brand?
we all are, but he's the front
Yeah.
line, if we will, that we put out, and that we do most of our marketing around for sure.
It's
Uh,
interesting. I've always talked that the COO's role, and I wrote a book recently called The Second in Command. And in the book, The Second in Command, I said one of the core roles of the COO is to make the CEO iconic, right? It's to turn them into the Howard Schultz and the Ray Kroc and the Roy Disneys. It's to turn them into, and
Yeah.
we have to make them look good, and then internally they need to make us look good because we're always rolling out the tough decisions, decisions, right? How do you rationalize that when you know you're smart, your two partners know you're smart, but then you're making him that iconic brand? Is there ever, hey, like what about me, or do you even care about that stuff anymore?
I think earlier on in my career, there was some elements of that. I mean, I've been second in command for the last decade, in many businesses as chief of staff or COO or director of ops, right? So I've kind of always not, played that role. So I think earlier on in my career, I was kind of like, oh, I want some of the attention and love. But I also just knew like what I was doing made it all possible.
Mm,
So just acknowledgement there from the CEO, right, or from the founder was always enough for me. Like that,
yeah.
I didn't need it from anybody else, you know.
It's very Sheryl
So
Sandberg. Sheryl Sandberg was the COO for Mark Zuckerberg for 15 years, and all she needed was Mark going, beauty. She's like, awesome.
yeah,
Like
you're
she
good.
didn't need it. Yeah. And I was the same at 1-800 Got Junk. I didn't need it. So you just said something I want to actually ask on. I almost said double click. I hate that term. I'm not gonna say I want to double click. I want to ask you about something. You mentioned that you'd had the chief of staff role, you've had a director of ops role, you've had the COO role. One of the most played episodes from the Second Command podcast was delineating between this chief of staff and the COO. But I'd love your take on it. What was the chief of staff? What's the difference between the chief of staff and a director of operations and a COO
Yeah.
from your vantage point?
Yeah, when I was chief of staff, we actually had a COO as well. And sometimes if before chief of staff kind of became a thing, I think COO played chief of staff a little bit.
Hmm.
Um, but I was really afforded in that opportunity to be an advisor to the ownership group and the executive group and kind of be the backup executive to any of the VPs. So I, was in every department and really trying to bring that executive team together. Where I see like COO really truly owning core functions of the business, right?
Mm.
Whether it's finance or supply chain or right, those elements. Chief of staff, I owned more project management
Yeah,
and and I weaved into every area of the business. And I owned more the company cadence of how and when and why we met, and it kept that always evolving
yeah.
to the needs of the company and driving board meeting and driving that stuff. So it was definitely different. Now, coming into the COO role, I'm blending a lot of that,
Sure.
pulling some of that, but I'm also hiring and training a new chief of staff as well. So
And it sounds like
yeah,
you're blending it in now as some skills and some systems that you're bringing in, but you're not doing it as a
right.
second role either.
Exactly.
Yeah, well,
Exactly.
and it's interesting because the true chief of staff role started in a government, and it was actually like you were the
Right.
chief of
Yeah.
staff to the president, chief of staff to a governor, and you were there to control calendar, projects, and communication flow, but you weren't overseeing stuff so much as like making sure that all of those things were all happening. And I think there's been a almost like a misuse of the term where people have given the chief of staff title to somebody who's really more like a director of operations, and they're not even doing a chief
Right.
of staff role at all. So now talk about what's the difference between a director of operations and a chief operating officer. Where do you think what does somebody have to do to not deserve the COO title, but what's a real C level in ops doing more than a director in ops tends to be doing?
Yeah, I think part of it is size of company, and size of responsibility. But at the director level, I was definitely still more in just the day-to-day tactical,
Yeah,
right? Getting the stuff done, putting the process and system in place. And now at the C level, it's a lot more strategy involvement,
bingo.
looking at the roadmap ahead, right? Hey, here's our financial forecast. How do we even have the elements we need to hit that from? So, a director level, that's really the biggest difference in my mind.
Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
think that the C level brings in a level of strategic insight, P&L responsibility, and autonomy
Mhm.
that they can actually do the job without somebody delegating it all to them. And they
Right.
probably
Yep. The
bring more.
proactive piece is Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then they also bring people and partners into the company with them. Like you come along and you bring in all these other people that used to work with you because you've got that suite. Whereas a director of ops doesn't know any real other talent to bring with them. So a director level
Right.
usually is being told what to do, they're being delegated to do, and yeah, they are more tactical. And I think companies have to be very careful giving, you're a true C level. I think companies have to be very careful giving out a chief operating or a chief marketing or a chief technology title to people that are director level or manager level or maybe VP level. And I think we've had a lot of title inflation that the banks started kind of back in the late 90s when they gave away vice president titles to everybody as a marketing tool. That's when it
Well,
started.
look, yeah, no, and if and you're spot on. If the individual isn't experienced enough to come with insights and recommendations of here's what we should do, or here's what's worked in the past, or here's what we should try. If there's not that strategic input, then it's not an executive.
Yeah. Yeah. My roommate in college was, we were having dinner in Toronto. It was probably 1998. So it was like 25 years ago, 26 years ago. And he said he'd just become the vice president of derivatives for Bear Stearns. I'm like, whoa. He goes, he goes, it's a marketing thing. He goes, I'm 7 layers below the CEO. I'm like, what? He goes, oh, yeah, it's like vice president, senior vice president, executive vice president. Like, he goes, I'm 7 layers below the CEO. He goes, it's a marketing tool so that when I call somebody and say I'm the vice president, they take me seriously. And the reason was email had
Yeah,
started,
yeah,
right? It was when email was coming out, 97, 98, we were all getting email addresses. So now there was a marketing thing attached to your name. Before I'd be like, hey, it's Bob. Who the is Bob? How'd you get my number? So yeah.
right.
So anyway,
Well, our CEO says the same thing. He's not a big believer in titles or job descriptions, and we've battled on that. But his belief is very similar in that, hey, titles are about serving outside individuals and serving your own career. Like outside of that, right? It's
well, I think there
less
is
important to him.
still,
That's his opinion. But
yeah. Okay. What's yours?
I believe that all success starts with clear expectations, and that the role of a title and a job description is an expectation setting. So
Yeah.
I very much believe in it,
Yeah,
Um,
that's exactly where I am. I think it's expectations, clarity of communication, so people understand where do we fit, how not like do as I tell you. That's like
no,
1980s, 70s. It's more just
yeah,
understanding, yeah, job descriptions, roles and responsibilities, who owns metrics, titles help people to understand.
right. Even compensation expectations,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
all of it.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree.
yes,
I think a lot of people gave away titles not caring and it came back to bite them in too.
right. Yeah.
So, in the chief operating officer role, you come in with these two kind of former partners, one in marketing, I think you said one in IT. How do the three of you stay in sync? And how does the leadership team stay in sync? And then how do you stay in sync with the CEO, kind of chief technical evangelist?
Yeah, so we kind of have like a pyramid, if you will, a CEO, me as COO, CMO, and then we have Christian as founder and chief science officer, and then his wife actually is our co-founder and chief brand
Oh, yeah.
officer. And so, we kind of make up the core. We have a board, to chairman and some investors, but and we're a fully remote company, which is actually a first experience for me.
Oh,
I've done hybrid, I've done in person, right? But this is fully remote for the first time. And at first, I'm not going to lie, like it was challenging, right? We needed more in-person time earlier on. I don't think we recognized that. And so now we have. But, our cadence is not unfamiliar to you or to others that are more seasoned, but we do, an annual retreat. We do planning sessions, we do team sessions, we do exec sessions as part of that. We do monthly board meetings, we do weekly executive syncs, which is just, us five. And then we do team weekly stand-ups, and then we do department, right, stuff and one-on-ones and all that. But
walk us through your executive sync. I'm curious how that runs and what your meeting rhythm is there, because I think that's a really important one. There's a whole idea of the L10 meetings that was popularized by Gino Wickman in the book Traction with part of the EOS
yeah,
system. Different.
yeah.
What's your kind of executive sync?
Really, we try to make that one heavier tactical because it's week to week, and we hold space more monthly for a strategic interaction. So this is reviewing, hey, open partnerships and open initiatives. What do we need to get approval on? What do we need to advance forward? Um, those kind of buy-ins, right? At the beginning, with Christian, the founder, right? He was calling all the shots, making all the decisions, and so bringing three high-level people into the business was valuable. But at first, like he was also like, holy cow, you guys are making a lot of decisions. And some of these maybe I wasn't aware of. So part of it's just communicating, hey, here's what we're doing this week. Here's where we're headed. Right. So part of it's just that
Staying in sync.
yeah, staying in sync. Like Racy, we like Racy a lot. So part of that's just the I in Racy, responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. It's just informing across the team. Here's what's going on. Um, yeah, so we typically review that, throw agenda items on, and it lasts hour to hour and a half. But it's increased reps for us
Yeah.
to continue to build trust, right? And to increase communication when we aren't in person.
I like that you're
Nothing
doing.
too fancy.
No, and it doesn't need to be. The model that I put in place for our leadership team, we called it our war meeting, which is our weekly action review. Each person did their 5 minute update of what's going well, what's not going well, what you're working on, and where you're stuck. And that pulse from everybody was really powerful. And then we looked at the metrics, right? We went through the leadership team
Yeah,
dashboard, and then we went and tried to help unstick people. That was just our thing, right? So that was like
yeah,
a
yeah,
good
it's beautiful.
pulse. So the fact that you're all remote, can you talk to that? You said this is the first time you've ever been on a remote team. How,
Yeah, fully remote. Yeah.
what are the upsides? What's the risks? Are you missing any part of the in-person, or how are you working around that?
There's a lot of personal flexibility when it comes fully remote that I think people really enjoy, right? And
Sure.
embrace.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's become a huge trend. And so, I mean, I'm not going to state that. I appreciate that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I think the risks are just that of communication between Slack, email, and product management tools. It can get really easy to get lost or to get overwhelmed or to get missed or to just think, oh, I don't need to share that and just get going the day to day and roll things forward. So I think that that's a big risk of not taking easy to get in the weeds and not create the space to take the step back to um, prepare the strategy and to communicate the strategy.
Sure.
I also feel like a risk with remote is you need a little bit more repetition. We found with the team, clarity often comes through repetition as much as sometimes I struggle with that as a leader, like just repeating it. You know, and I felt like with remote, there's needed to be a little bit more of that. I think we're lucky that we have a team that's committed and a founder that's committed to creating in person. So we do gather the entire team, and it's not a big team of 15, but quarterly we do get together in person for a few days and meet.
That's great.
And he sees that as an investment that we would be paying in rent otherwise, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is rare for a remote company. And then I'm a little lucky too because we have a few core people here in the Boise, Idaho area. The CEO, the CMO, and myself are all here, so we get
Oh,
together at least once a week, right? So it's kind of more hybrid for us, where the rest of the company is kind of remote. But you know,
was ClickFunnels
yeah,
Boise?
ClickFunnels, yeah, is a big one.
So
Boise ConvertKit
ConvertKit.
is a
Yeah.
ConvertKit's here.
I remember
On
reading
the health
recently.
side, bodybuilding.com was the biggest one, the first one that kind of really blew up. But
And you know what
yeah.
bodybuilding.com was Bryna and her husband. Bryna is now married to a really good friend of mine in Scottsdale,
Oh,
Arizona,
no way.
Max Hansen. Yeah, Bryna just sent me a note about Max's birthday the other day. Yeah, she and her husband had built
Small
bodybuilding.com,
world.
sold it like 10 years ago. Russell and I were part of a mastermind community called Genius Network. So I met Russell years
Yeah, yeah,
ago.
Joe.
Yeah, Joe Polish's group. But I'm trying to remember. This is like a weird segue moment, ADD
Oh, you're
moment.
good.
But like, so in Boise, there's like a Holiday Inn near the highway. It's middle of nowhere, but there's this amazing restaurant kind of on the water right near it, like
Barbacoa.
Barbacoa. There you go.
Yep. Mhm.
Awesome place.
Yeah,
I'll get
phenomenal restaurant. Yeah,
right.
no, I'm glad you got
Yeah.
to experience it. It's
I
like a
was
little museum
It
yeah.
was great. I was there speaking to the YPO chapter in Boise, and they put me up at this. I'm like, why do you hate me? Like, why did you put me in the middle of this place?
Why am I over
And the Holiday Inn guy's like, oh, there's a restaurant over here. I'm like, great. I'm taking a recommendation from the guy at the Holiday Inn front desk. Like, this is not going to be good.
here?
I had 3 out of 5 meals at Barbacoa over 2 days. I
Yeah,
love the place. Yeah, I'm
it's
obsessed.
phenomenal.
It's great.
That's fun.
Boise is a cool spot. Okay, you
I'm
talk
glad
about
you experienced it.
repetition. Jim Collins in the book Good to Great mentioned that we have to repeat what we're saying so often to our people so that the ideas have started to stick. And it's only when they're making
Mm.
fun of us have the ideas started to stick. So I feel your pain though on the repetition. It's like I told you. It's like, yeah, but I didn't remember, or there were 80 things coming
And
up.
you got to put it in a document and you got to, say it verbally and you got to remind it in a one-on-one. And so we've tried to utilize multiple mediums, right, of communication to provide that repetition, but also just I've had to, remind myself of like, you're going to be a broken record, accept it, like just be the broken record, embrace it.
It's so
and
important.
that's done wonders for us. So,
And I think that's a skill that you can kind of trickle down through the organization too, right? And so entrepreneurs get so frustrated with that. They don't understand that, our job is to grow people, right? To grow their skills, to grow their confidence, to grow their connection, to keep them connected with us and our ideas. And it never that's not easy, but to get frustrated with them because they don't know or they're busy, it's good that you're okay with that. Like you
oh,
recognize
and I
that.
think it's natural, right? I mean, I get frustrated having to tell my kids to do something twice, like, so it's natural. Same thing with team members or direct reports. I think it's just part of the culture, but I don't think it's an excuse not to do it, you
Hmm.
know?
What are some of the systems that you learned when you were building your past company that you've brought over with you? What are kind of some of the systems you ported in?
That cadence cycle, and fine tuning it and customizing it. I actually was part of Alex Sharfin's Billionaire Code Mastermind in my first experience as a director of ops. And that was kind of where I got, some of the foundational training and
Yeah.
then really, put it into practice at that first organization, but really fine tuned it at Microbe and Cellcore. So the cadence, I think, is understated and underappreciated and never done. And I think that that's where people go wrong is they think, oh, I have a weekly meeting and but it doesn't mean like it shouldn't change over time.
Right.
Like you should consider how do we refresh this and hey, we're hitting a lull, so we need to change things up. So I think that that's a big one. I think the marriage of operations, finance, and marketing is way underrated.
Speak to that.
If you if you can those are areas that, along with sales, that often become siloed
Yeah.
and that speak different languages,
Yeah.
right? And finance looks at the metrics one way, and marketing looks at them another way. Um, and there's been some good voices in the e-commerce industry, like Taylor Holiday of Common Thread and others that are trying to help bring those conversations together. But those challenges of being able to align on contribution margin, right? And to give the marketing team the freedom to run and sprint when they need to without having to like always look at coming back to the financials and the financial team slowing the marketing team down. So right now as COO, we're just using fractional finance resources. So we don't have a CFO. So that's falling on me, right? And I've enjoyed that. That's not my, background and expertise, but I've enjoyed that because I feel like I've been able to empower the marketing team a little bit, but
Mm.
also maintain our profitability, help them sprint a little faster. So
Can you talk about working with a fractional finance person? How do you work with them? How do you keep them kind of lined up with what you want them focused on? How do you not let them go down the 17 rabbit holes that, you know,
Cameron, it's a challenge. It all comes back to me again, expectations. We've cycled through, honestly, we've cycled through two or three fractionals to see we're in, 2 to 3 months with our current partner. I think part of it is deeper vetting of do they truly have the experience that you need? Not that another
Mm,
business like you needs or that like you has done. Because people can say, oh, yeah, I've done supplement businesses or I've done e-commerce businesses. And then you think, oh, they know what they're doing. But breaking it down into very specific scenarios, or hey, here's monthly journal entries that we need. Have you ever done anything even remotely, similar
yeah.
to
And
this?
can you show me here?
And yeah, exactly, exactly. So that was really helpful with us failing a few times with some fractional finance, and then we've had a good rhythm with this new group. But having to get a little bit more specific in what you need and what you're requesting um, has been the best bet so far for us. So
I think that so many companies do themselves a disservice that they get very sloppy with hiring fractional people. They get very sloppy with hiring freelancers. They get very sloppy with hiring outsourced firms to come and do stuff. It's like, oh, I used to use this email marketing firm. Oh, good, I'll use them. Stop. Put them through the same rigorous interview process that you would do to hire a person, right? Or, oh, they're just a fractional
yeah,
CFO.
yeah,
They've always been, well, we'll just use them. No, stop. Like, do they match your core values? Do they have the right skill set? How are they to communicate with? Do you like them? Like, would you want to hang out with them? Do they have this? Can they do what you need them to do?
yeah.
Nobody does that. So you had a couple of missteps. How did you know that the missteps were happening with your fractional finance person?
It was always like pulling teeth, right? Babysitting. If unless we asked and kind of had the thumb, it just wasn't
Wasn't happening.
happening, right? And in a hyper growth environment, when you're growing 20% month over month, like you don't always have your eye that close, right? And so we missed it for a little bit. And then we come
Yeah.
back and like, hey, there's 6 months of journal entries not done. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So
I spoke to somebody
um,
today in Dubai that had didn't have the financial oversight, and they had, I don't even know what to call it, but some fake invoices sent over, and they were so perfectly done that someone on their finance team paid the fake invoices, and they ended up going to this bank account. So then when the client called and said, "Hey, we haven't been paid," Spencer's like, "Yeah, we paid you to the tune of like 2.5 million bucks." And he's like, "No, we've never been
point
paid."
5.
But they'd hacked into their email system and had been creating these fake invoices and then dropping it into a bank account. And so, yeah, 2.5 million bucks. They ended up getting it back,
We,
but
wow.
because he's friends with the CEO of the bank, like it was crazy town. Uh,
Yeah, we just got a fraud invoice that was very similar to that. It was real legit, a communication with our CEO, all this packaged up, 40K. And luckily, we've put in some of those checks and balances like that we get approval before it and some of that, and we avoided it. But
yeah,
fraud's getting good.
I just had a wire for a CEO who's getting me to coach them. They've got their COO coming into the COO Alliance. They have their COO coming to our Vancouver COO Alliance event. So it's an expensive invoice for like all of this stuff for the course of a year. And the his finance team sent notes that we need something from the bank or some authorization for the wire. So I sent like a Loom video from me and the bank letter.
It's
I'm like,
really me.
yeah, and I also said, and oh, by the way, like I'm like 100 yards away from where your CTO has a place in City Walk in Dubai. She's like, okay, you're good. Thanks for that.
You're
But like, yeah,
good.
it's crazy. You got to inspect what you expect. So you mentioned Alex Sharfin's mastermind. Alex and I were in a couple of masterminds together. We were one called Mastermind Talks, another called the Genius Network. Great guy, Sharp. Are you still working on your skill sets as a COO? And if so, where and how?
More recently, in this role, I've been diving deeper into the finance side because that's a function I haven't owned until now. I've been around, right? I'm
Yeah,
not a stranger to it,
yeah,
but I haven't fully owned it. So that's kind of where most of my, um, I guess, up leveling has been focused right now. And I haven't necessarily found one group that I've latched onto in that arena. We use Colby a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with Colby
yeah. I know
Index
Kathy. I
Assessment.
know
I'm a
Kathy and
big,
David.
a
I
big,
know Kathy and David
yeah.
Colby quite well, both of them.
Yeah, so I'm a big fact finder. So I love just
What's your Colby
AI, and
profile?
I'm a 7.6 2.
Oh,
So,
you're
but
pretty.
I initiate as a fact finder and then
Yeah,
high
and
follow
fall
through
through.
and then
Yeah, so
modify
anybody
as a
anybody
quick
who
start.
so
So,
anyone who doesn't know Colby, there's the four numbers. The first is called Fact Finder, and that's a person who starts projects by asking a lot of questions. The second, I've told Kathy Colby and David Colby they've misnamed it. It shouldn't be called follow through because there's nothing to do with following through on things. The second high number means you like to put systems and playbooks and SOPs
yeah,
in
it's
place,
more systems.
a
Yeah.
checklist to start something. The third is called quick start. It means what it is, like you start quickly and
Yeah.
plan later. That's very entrepreneurial. And then the last one I said they've
Ready,
misnamed as
fire, aim.
well.
Yeah.
The last one is called implementer, and that's a person who needs the tools or the physical models to then start something. Almost all of the members of the COO Alliance, we have a large mastermind community, 17 countries, and it's all COOs. No entrepreneurs are allowed to be in the room. They're all very high fact finder and follow through. Almost
Mm.
none
I
are
mean,
very high in the third number. We have a couple that are
right.
high third number, but they tend to be like a co-founder COO. So they still have a little bit of entrepreneurial. Um,
Yeah.
Mine will blow you away. Mine's 4393. I'm like a very entrepreneurial,
Okay.
but I've been
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
COO of three companies, but they were entrepreneurial startup companies. So I had to be that entrepreneurial,
That's cool.
and I just used a
It
lot of
makes sense
systems.
also for where you've come and what you're doing
Right.
now, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I love the
Yeah.
COO space, but I'm kind of the entrepreneur in residence for them, right? Yeah, I love the
That's
Colby
beautiful.
profile. Do you guys use Colby with all of your employees? And do you use it for recruiting, or do you use it once you've hired them to learn how to work better with them?
We haven't used it for recruiting. I'm not opposed to that. We just haven't made that investment. We do require it as part of our onboarding, and
Yeah,
then we've used some of their like team analysis tools, which are really powerful.
yeah,
Their A to A comparisons, their coaching reports.
yeah.
Um, so
Yeah,
yeah, we really enjoy all that.
I don't like any of the personality profiles for recruiting. I think they can actually bias people in the wrong direction, and I have some data points that can prove that. I absolutely use it for onboarding, and I absolutely use it for getting to know people. And the A to A to match is a really powerful one. That's you do like a 30-minute call or an hour call with people at Colby. They take one person's Colby profile and the other person's Colby profile, and they teach them how to walk and talk together.
It's
And
beautiful.
so we have all of the CEOs of our COO Alliance members have to do a Colby, and all
Oh,
the
that's
CEOs
awesome.
have to, because then I want them to learn how to, like,
Yeah.
guys, it's like men are not hairy versions of women, right? It's like men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and CEOs and
Right.
COOs
CEOs
need
are
to
from
learn.
Mars and CEOs are from
Yeah,
Venus. Yeah,
totally.
that's
Like,
beautiful.
right. So like entrepreneurs have to slow
Yeah.
down a little bit. We have to say, do you have any more questions? What else would you like to know? And then COOs need to not give all the data to the entrepreneur. We need to give them the sound bites, the
Yeah.
executive summary. So yeah, it's
And I
very,
think that's the other miss, honestly, that Colby, they emphasize the numbers a lot. It's not about the numbers, it's about the strengths,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And my strength as a quick start is to modify, whereas an initiating quick start, their strength is to quick start, right?
right.
And
Yeah.
I think that's been my luck dealing with a lot of initiating quick starts is I can modify, so I can adapt. I'm not low quick start to where you just react, right? And push back.
It's even how I can actually interview people is I'm just genuinely curious about the role. I know the role of COO. I've been around it. I've got like a community for 8 years of COOs from all over the world, and I've been in it, but I'm genuinely curious. So I don't bother sitting and reading your bio and learning lots about you and doing all the research. I don't need to. I just need to show up and be
Yeah.
really curious, right? And really pay attention. But if I was a high fact finder, I'd probably spend, an hour worth of time getting to know somebody, really doing the research and thinking it might make some of the interviews a little bit better. I don't know.
But it would mostly just take a lot more of your time.
But yeah, but they wouldn't miss some of the stuff. They wouldn't like, oh, I didn't realize, right? But for me, because I'm in my natural style, I'm in my unique ability, it just resonates better. So it is about just understanding each other. I'm glad you guys use Colby. I think it's a really powerful tool and highly encourage it. All right, I want to go back and give yourself some advice. If you were going to give the younger 21, 22-year-old Spencer some advice, what advice would you tell yourself that you know to be true today?
I think one of the things I'm still working on and 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 I've always taken pride in though is I'm good at getting done,
Hmm.
right? High executive function. And
Hmm.
that can be a good superpower, but also like the other side of that coin is it often prevents you from becoming really good at delegating and leveraging a
Yeah.
team,
Yeah.
right? And so I think if I was looking back, I would say, hey, learn how to delegate earlier because you would save yourself a lot of heartache earlier in the career for sure, you know.
Yeah, it's well, it is our biggest strength is our biggest weakness, right? Because we're really good at getting
Hmm.
stuff done. We don't tend to delegate. I'm guilty as charged, same thing. I learned years ago that my to-do list doesn't have my name on it. It doesn't say Cameron's to-do list. It says to-do
It's
list.
just
So now what I try to do is
this
figure
is
out,
what needs to get done.
well,
Ah,
first, does it even need to get done? Like, can I just cross it off and know it doesn't? Because sometimes I could delegate stuff that, you know what, we don't need to do that. So can I kill it? And then who can I delegate it to? And I'll find myself going, I can't delegate it because they don't have the skills. No, I'm going to delegate it to them and I'm going to spend the time giving them the skills. I'd rather spend time giving them the skills versus spending the time doing the work. But
yeah,
that's a skill set, but
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Okay.
It is. It
Yeah.
is.
Well, Spencer Matthews, the COO from Stemregen, really appreciate you spending time with us today. Thank you for sharing all your expertise and wisdom, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
The hardest thing for me was learning how to manage people, thinking that everybody's the same as you and that everybody's motivated by the same things and has the same knowledge. And it's being tolerant that people don't have that knowledge because you can't just expect them to know everything. Learning that has allowed me to grow as a leader because it lets me see that not everyone's the same.